Hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we are continuing with the film journey, talking about a good friend of mine who's actually we just keep seeing each other in chats and then live streams and one of us is on a live stream, the other one's not, et cetera, et cetera. But Dell, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How you doing tonight?
Doing good, doing good. Just had a day of pain, but that'll be short for other people. Yeah, so a day of pain. But we're getting through it. But we're here to talk about movies and hopefully not bring up any painful memories.
No, I think this should be pretty painless.
Okay, good, man. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, how before we jump into this, how did you interact with YouTube, I guess. I haven't I need to start asking this at the beginning. I was like, how did YouTube begin for you?
For me, it was like a lot of people. It kind of around pandemic time. Spent a lot of time at home, so you start looking for new, different things to watch because you watch the same old things. And I'm a movie lover, but I mean, some points you don't want to watch a movie at some sometimes. But it was like, all right, let's see, because there are people on Twitter that I knew and Instagram, and it's like, you know what? Does anybody on YouTube talk about their collections? I just want to see, and I just started randomly pulling up collection videos. It so happened to be around the time when a lot of people were doing their whole collection videos. So I was watching all of these hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long
Yep.
videos of
I
people's
know those
collections.
days.
Yeah, and they've got way more than I have. It's weird because like I'm the movie guy that in my family, and everybody comes to my house and their eyes get big. It's like, whoa, you have so many movies. But then I go on when I got on YouTube, and it's like, man, that guy has like two, three, four times what I have. And
More
from
of a
there,
problem.
yeah, really. And from there, a few of those people, you gravitate towards certain personalities and started watching more of their content. 4K D-Ray was one of those. Stephanie at Movie Chatter was one of those. I watched a lot of their videos. And then the movie battles came along with 4K. And then, there I got just a lot of encouragement from others. Hey, you should start a channel. And then at one point, I just pressed play and been here ever since. It's been a little over a year now.
Nice. Well, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say I've seen that growth come like firsthand. I was gonna say just seeing you on a lot of those live streams, like I had mentioned, and just a bunch of other creators. Or that's what's lucky about our community. I feel like as I feel like we prop each other up for the most part, like 99% of the time. Hopefully, obviously there's things that are like every group of whatever it is, but most of the time it's positive, I feel like, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I've gotten nothing but positive interactions with people. And, I've heard about other people having some negative interactions or some people complaining, that maybe they don't feel quite a part of it as other people. But I try to tune that out. And if there's something negative going on, I really just kind of shy away from it. And because I'm here for a good time, talk movies with people. I don't need extra stress. I have enough of that in real life. I don't need
Yeah.
YouTube streaming.
I mean, that's why we watch the things that we watch, right? Or there's like an escape element to it, and hopefully we're coming to these things in a positive light. But yeah, even for the people who have like I've seen it too, who've been dealing with stuff, or there's maybe like even like a lot of the times it's mostly like usually like releases come out and then there's like some backlashes with some things, but
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I mean, that's inevitable. Yeah.
yeah,
But as far as like interacting with other YouTubers, I steer clear of all the negativity. At least I try to anyway. But yeah,
yeah,
I mean, we all gonna get a messed up copy of something at some point.
yeah. That's just reality, right? So.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, mentioning this first part of it, getting started. You want to plug your channel and your platform real quick before we jump into everything.
Sure. Dell on Movies on YouTube. And on my channel, I do a lot of I do some top 10 lists, I do some hauls, I do some movie recommendations, and of course, lately the thing I'm most known for is the movie swap, where I'll have on another collector and we will give each other a movie that the other person has never seen before. We'll watch it and then we'll discuss it live. And we've been having a great time with that. So I'm looking forward to more of those and maybe coming up with some new ideas at some point.
Yeah. No, I've been enjoying the movie swap stuff. That's always a fun little treat to see like what people think of sending each other stuff. I think it's a really cool way to interact with a bunch of other people too, because you're making new connections. You're also sending each other stuff because that's that pretty much at the end of the day, that's what we're all doing is we're just recommending things for each other, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I like the one-on-one and where we get to kind of dig into a movie or two movies for in movie swaps case and just have a little back and forth and we chit chat with each other on other things maybe sometimes and we go see what the chat is talking about and a lot of times they're talking about the movies we're talking about. Sometimes they're asking random questions and I interact with those and just try to have a good time with it.
Yeah. So, well, I'm sure we'll do it again, but at the end, make sure to go down in the links down below for all of Dell's social media and with the channel too, and hopefully to catch him on some of those live streams for those swaps and also just check out those videos because they're great. But today we're going to be talking about the film journey, and I know this is a tried and true thing for a lot of people who are watching this. So I always like to ask, first off, what are you currently watching right now? Like, what have you been watching lately?
Lately, I've been watching a lot of stuff for movie swap and plus trying to get into theaters as much as possible. Um, I went and saw The Blackening last week, I think, or the week before. I'm gonna try to sneak out and see the new indie movie at some point, even though I've heard some kind of iffy things on it. And yeah, and still lots more stuff this summer. Um, for movie swap, we just had two westerns on for my last swap with Grant, movie buff Grant, and we did Once Upon a Time in the West and The Sons of Katie Elder, and we had a good time talking about those. My daughter showed me a movie the other night called Sheroes on was it Netflix or Hulu? I think it was Hulu. Um, uh, uh, and last night she showed me another movie called The Silent Twins. That was really interesting. Not the greatest movie, but really interesting. Supposedly based on a true story. These two twins who only communicated with each other, like they wouldn't talk to anybody else but each other, and that caused all sorts of problems with their parents and their family and education and relationships that they couldn't have. So it was an interesting movie. Um, but yeah, I'm just watching whatever's out there, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I feel like a lot of the times mood strikes us, right, for whatever's going on in the moment. So
Yeah,
yeah, well, no, I love some of those movies. Some of them I haven't seen, like those Netflix movies. I haven't checked those ones out, but
right.
I need to.
It's
How was The Blackening? I still want to check that one out.
Blackening was pretty funny. I really enjoyed that. It's obvious the way it turns out, the whole because it's a slasher flick sort of um with who done it kind of deal. It's not obvious who the killer is at the beginning, but if you've seen a few slasher flicks, it is obvious who it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
But
You may have seen a couple.
the humor works really good. The acting is pretty good, and then there's some commentary on horror flick history and even some sort little bit of social commentary in there. Not necessarily a ton. It's not trying to hit you over the head with anything, but it is there. And so I had a good time with it.
Yeah, now it looks like a lot of fun, and I need to get myself to theaters too because I only have seen Indiana Jones lately, which was all right. I mean, it was a good time, but yeah, it was kind of like you were saying, it's kind of okay. I think those are some fun things to check out currently, and I've been on my own random path recently myself, so I've been watching a lot of horror movies. I finally watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. So
Ah,
yeah,
I've seen it, but it's been 20 something years. I think I'm going to try to binge the franchise and rank them during October because I've seen them all, but the viewings are so spread out, so it's kind of hard to say, okay, well, I like this one and not this one, or this one's better than that one. So I think I'm going to binge them. I did that with Halloween last year, and believe it or not, for about half of those movies, it was the first time watch for about half of that franchise. So I had a good time, but there are a lot of bad Halloween movies, but that's
yeah.
another.
Well, I mean, I know you probably just saw this, but I just talked with Steph on the channel, talking about Friday the 13th because I haven't seen all of them myself, and so it's some first time watches as well. So I get that completely. There's
Okay.
some not so good Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little up and down, but I'm a Friday the 13th fan, so and I think they're fairly consistent that you know what you're getting most of the time. It's not
Yeah.
really the highs are not that high, but the lows are not that low. That's the way I always say it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, I mean, there's a sensibility with Friday, unlike Halloween, kind of, because I feel like Halloween was kind of set up serious in a way
Mhm.
and then kind of got silly. So I get that point completely.
Right.
So, but well, now we're going to get into the trench of things and figure out some background on some early childhood memories with the medium itself. So, tell us about kind of your first interactions with movies and whatnot. How'd that come about?
It it's tough to say how it came about. But I was a kid who was in theaters a lot, and my mom worked at a theater for a time in her life, and she would often just use the theater as a babysitter sometimes because she couldn't find a babysitter. So I was in the theater watching movies that I probably shouldn't have been watching that old. Like I mean, I saw Jaws in the theater and I was like 4 years old. And scarred me for life. And
I
my
haven't touched the ocean since.
pretty much. I mean, I've been in it, but I don't go very far. It's it's and before that, my earliest movie memory really was Enter the Dragon. And if you've ever seen the full movie, it's not really a kid's movie, even though nothing. I mean, it's nothing too crazy, but it is an R-rated movie in the '70s when you had to work a little bit to be an R-rated movie. So Eh,
Yeah.
yeah, that was my earliest movie memory. And then uh, as we got a little bit older, got closer to the 80s, eventually we would get a VCR. And I'll probably get into that when we talk about adolescence. But yeah, watch movie of the week or on TV or on the Late Show, the Late Show. So I watched a lot of black exploitation there and just uh, low budget horror movies like The Car and Blackula and
Hmm.
eventually The Warriors and just all sorts of movies that I would watch. I watched and a lot of kung fu movies on Saturday afternoons in New York. Growing up in New York, Saturday afternoons 3 to 5 was kung fu theater or master. I think it was just straight kung fu theater. And watched all sorts of movies like Five Deadly Venoms, 36 Chambers of Shaolin, The Kid with the Golden Arm, and all those classics.
Yeah, I was gonna say the great ones. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say I'm so jealous of both you and KB because you're both fellow New Yorkians and you both kind of grew up during that time where those like were
yeah,
just airing and like I'm just I mean obviously thank goodness that Arrow and all these companies 88 Films and whatnot are putting out all these movies finally
yeah,
um
yeah.
on really good additions, but I'm just like I'm having an absolute blast. So yeah.
They're loads of fun, and I loved them as a kid. I watch them now, and I just have a blast. It's one of those. If I put my critic hat on, you could tear those
Oh,
movies
for sure.
apart, most of them. But it's not about that with those movies. It's just, you
No.
know what? I want to see some fighting. I want a few laughs here and there. And yeah, every once in a while, one of those movies is really serious and really technically sound, and it's a really great movie. So those are bonuses, and I just have a blast with them.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I echo all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was gonna say when you were saying early memories of like, you were saying your mom worked at a movie theater. Was
Mhm.
that like a was that like a long period of time, or was it kind of just early on for you?
It was early on, and it was a couple of different times. So like when I was really young, she worked in a movie theater for a couple of years, and then she went and she did something else, and then she worked in a movie theater again for a few years a little bit later on. And so basically two short periods in my life, a couple of years. But when you're 12 or less, a year seems like it's forever. So so a
Yeah.
couple of years is a really long time.
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, but it's really formative, like you were saying. I mean, I think that's where you're saying. I guess your mom is probably the one who's kind of put you in the more of the movie camp, I guess, or just kind of circumstances?
She did. It was both. I'd say both. Because as I, got a little bit older, and VCRs came into play, VHS was popular, and mom and pop VHS rental places were all over the place. So we had a couple that we would go to, and she would really let me rent anything I wanted. She was kind of lax about what I watched. So, I mean, I wasn't coming home with anything too outrageous, but yeah, if it was a horror movie I wanted to see, she's like, yeah, go get it, whatever it is. Action movie, it didn't matter. If the
Hmm.
movie so happened to have a lot of nudity, it was like, yeah, you're gonna see him someday.
Yeah, you're gonna see something.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she wasn't really strict in that regard. So she kind of just let me loose in the video store for the most part.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, going to that adolescent years that you're kind of mentioning and foreshadowing with VHSs, were there any like standouts that like you remember renting or like being like just completely blown away by?
Yeah, it wasn't really renting the ones that I was really blown away by. The ones that I was really blown away by, well, I would say other than like, the Schwarzenegger and Stallone movies, got to see all of those. We always remember those, but the ones I really remember more than others are the ones that we taped off of either HBO or back then we had a cable network called WHT, and we would just tape movies off there. So we had these blank VHS tapes that we bought because I don't know if you know this, but back then a brand new movie on VHS would be $80 and up.
Yeah. Like, yeah,
Crazy.
very expensive.
So yeah, so we people weren't really buying and collecting movies like that. So we would tape them off of HBO or like I said, WHT or Cinemax or whatever it is you had. And so we had this library of videos that had 2 to 3 movies on it each, depending on the length of the movies. And I've had 48 hours on one tape. I must have watched 50 times, and I had a few Eddie Murphy movies, but 48 Hours was really the first one. I watched that one over and over and over. And then I had a few other action movies that I watched from the early 80s a lot. Uh, got into some of the Friday the 13th movies, and Color Purple was another one because that was a big hit in my household. So I must have seen that 20 plus times. And yeah, those were kind of the standout ones.
Yeah, I mean, those are it's crazy to think about like when those movies came out too. Like that's the I feel like I mean, obviously the 80s were like the golden age of home media, especially when in terms of, like you were saying, kind of that cost prohibitiveness, especially early on with VHS, like
Mhm.
it kind of transitioned into like, it's luckily you had, ways to get around that or, access something in some kind of
Yeah,
way.
and it's nuts, I'm gonna just kind of back up a little bit. I mentioned that back then, I'm not exaggerating. New VHS tapes when they were coming out, I mean 79.99 was pretty standard price. And for I know there's a lot of viewers a lot younger than I am. Just think about it. With inflation, you're talking about 150, $160 movie. Imagine if the new release comes out, if next month when Fast X gets officially released, they slapped $160 price tag on it just for that movie, just one movie. That's what we were dealing with at that time.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. I mean, obviously, we live in the boutique label age, but obviously it's vast improvement to the VHS age, obviously with special
Yeah,
features and whatnot and packaging. But it's like we have it good compared to
yeah.
that pricing.
Yeah,
So
comparatively, and even for us, because like I said, we're taping these movies. You gotta you gotta try to conserve space on the tape. You gotta know exactly how long you can tape on this one tape. If you've got a movie on there that's already 2 hours and 15 minutes and the other movie is an hour 45, well, how much time am I allowed for this other movie? Can I get this whole movie on? And if you miscalculate it, you chopped off the end of a movie, or if you were one of those people who sometimes you tape something off of regular TV. Imagine ABC shows a movie or TNT shows a movie, and we didn't even have TNT at that point. It was just really ABC, CBS, NBC. Imagine they're showing a movie and you're trying to tape it, and some people would just tape the whole thing, the whole broadcast from beginning to end without stopping, but a lot of people would try to cut out the commercials. So you every
Yeah,
time you're kind of doing this, trying to judge it exactly when it goes to commercial and when it comes back, and how many mistakes do we make doing that? So yeah, this age is a whole lot better for people who for home media than that one was.
yeah. It's just wild thinking about like the amount of attention you have to be one of those people who are like, okay, commercials are coming up. I need to figure out when to stop this. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
wild to me.
Yeah, it was the only thing you're watching the movie, but then you're like, okay, once the screen starts to fade to black, they're going to commercial, and then you're watching the commercials, and you kind of got to judge, well, okay, is this one the last commercial? And a lot of times, and I had it down to at least a mini science anyway for some of the movies. It's like, okay, they'll show a bunch of commercials, but when they show a commercial for something that's on their network, that's usually the last one. So I get ready then. But that's not always that wasn't 100% bulletproof. It was sometimes it was another commercial after that. So you hit play and it's like, oh man, now I
Yep.
gotta stop it and do it again. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was crazy.
Well, I mean, I remember because I mean, we had those 6 hour tapes, especially like in the early part of the 90s. And I never thought about like cutting out like the commercials, but obviously, like, I didn't know about tape space back then was probably shorter, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, we had our tapes was 6 hours. Yep.
okay.
You could
Yeah,
you could you could spend a little more, maybe get an 8 hour tape.
sure. But yeah, those were the days. My dad still uses his VHS. I don't think he records anything on there anymore, but like he's got one of those dual players that has a DVD and VHS and has the record capabilities on there too. So, but yeah, still uses the old fashioned way. So
We had a dual VHS. And what we would do sometimes when we rented movies, we would put play it in one side and try to record it on the blank one on the other. And a lot of times, what you ran into was whatever copywriting they put on there. So then the movie didn't look right when you went to watch it back on the one you taped. So then that was a whole nother learning process, try to figure out how to get around that stuff.
yeah, the golden age of trying to figure out how almost like weirdly enough, it's almost like how with like Napster and all that stuff that happened. It's like it's this
Hmm.
weird piracy, but like not really because like it's clearly being run. It's weird.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, what a time. Yeah. So I mean, like you were saying, the heydays of VHS recording reminds me of kind of the good times. But I kind of curious, like you were saying recording a lot of those tapes and whatnot. Was that like the first thing you started collecting, I guess, or did it kind of transfer into like DVD or anything like that, or?
That I wouldn't call that my collection. That was really my mom. That was really her thing. I would just have free reign and access to it whenever. I was actually not a movie collector until well into my adult years. First thing I really collected was baseball cards.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I had lots of those. Big baseball fan all my life, and that turned into comic books. Did that for a few years, and I was just never anal enough about keeping them in good shape. So that was a a dead end kind of proposition for me because I used to I actually read comic books first off, which a
Right.
lot of kids just put them in plastic, and then I would draw pictures and things like that from the comic books. Um, and collected CDs for a long time, a lot of music, and then eventually I started collecting as an adult. I was working at Blockbuster, um, and they used to sell previewed movies, three for $10 or three for $20, depending on the movie, and that's really what got me into it.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say I remember those preview movie days in Blockbuster too.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, a lot of the like you couldn't get like the original covers, but you'd have like the Blockbuster, like it's like I guess slip or whatever, and then you'd have the the movie like on the spine or whatever. So
Yeah, for us, I mean, it had the artwork was
Oh,
intact,
okay. So you had
but it was in a blockbuster case.
right,
So they had the little hole in the bottom for the lock, and it says blockbuster on the inside when you open it up. And well, in this case, this was by the time DVD came around, so it was you know way further along than what we're talking about as far as
right.
VHS goes.
Yeah. Well, I like that you mentioned baseball cards too, because my dad's actually a big. I mean, I know you're a Yankees fan, but he's a big Missouri sports fan. So like Cardinals, Royals, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And actually, my middle name, I'm actually named after Lou Brock.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, so of all things,
Okay.
and so I have some Lou Brock memorabilia. Um, yeah, no, it's a small world, but yeah, I was gonna say baseball. I don't talk about much. I mostly talk about basketball if I ever mention anything sport wise. So
Right. I'm a basketball fan too. But yeah, Lou Brock. I never actually saw him play, but I did have one of his cards like towards the end of his career, and I read a lot about him because I used to read a lot about baseball, and so I read a lot about him and Maury Wills and all time great base stealers, and obviously he had the record for quite a while.
yeah. Well, luckily, I mean, Lou Brock was a really, really good dude. So, like, I'm glad that I'm named after that guy. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's not apparent, but so, but it's cool bringing up all those little things that you collected like that. I think that probably a similar story for a lot of us. I mean, I know I collected different things growing up, like action figures and the
Mhm.
CDs. It especially came around to me as well. So, but yeah, it evolves over time, right? So,
Yeah.
so I guess you were saying kind of that transition to like the DVD. So like probably like the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s when a lot of that was happening. Started the collecting started becoming more of a thing.
Around oh 05, 2005, around that area. That's when I started collecting movies. And before that, I had movies because I actually had kids before began my collection. But it was a lot of Disney movies or just stuff that they wanted to watch, and it was a few VHS here and there. We had a lot of Olsen Twins movies for my girls, and
Yeah, I remember watching those.
The Lion King, and all those, Little Mermaid, all those '90s era, Disney movies. I had a lot of those, and had a few action movies here and there. But I would have never considered myself a collector because it was probably less than 30 that we had all total. It was when
Yeah.
DVD took over,
Hmm.
when my collection changed and took off.
Yeah, I was gonna say when was the snap? Like when did you realize it was a problem? All right.
Oh man, I would say within a year after starting. I had one small rack that I actually still have, and it's 3 feet, 3.5 feet tall.
Mhm.
Um, Holds about 170-ish DVDs, and I filled that up and had to buy another one. And then I filled that second one up, and I was like, okay, so now we have a thing now.
Mhm.
It's a collection. It's a problem, and now I have one of those. One is broken, and then all my other bookcases are, they're 6 feet tall and
Mhm.
hold all sorts of stuff. And now I filled all those up, and I have some more in boxes that I just can't put on a shelf yet. So yeah, it's an issue. Space is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I lucked out because I live alone where I'm at, and I have this room that I dedicated to it. But knowing this room is going to get full probably in the next few years is a little scary. So,
Yeah,
yeah, and also if there's somebody who's in my future, like that's the scary part too. Is like, well, what do I
yeah.
do? Is like,
What do I do?
yeah, I'm like, I guess this will be my office and or something.
I was lucky in that regard because, like I said, I had kids. I was already married by the time I started collecting. It was one of those things where, you know, I bring home a few at a time, and like I said, when I start noticing, of course, my wife is noticing, and it's like, oh, well, I guess that's his new thing. So yeah, she just kind of rolls with the punches.
I guess that's his
So to
new
speak.
thing. Oh man.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any like noticeable like titles that you remember like early on that you're like, I gotta get this or Any things that like because I didn't start collecting until like really collecting because I also collected around that time like VHSs and some DVDs, but
Mhm.
never over like maybe 100 or 200. Like that's probably up until like the early 2010s or whatever. But going back to you, any like early things like pop up that like you were like getting into at the time?
When I started collecting DVDs,
Hmm.
I would say you start off you try to get all your favorite movies from your childhood. That's really when you start deciding that okay, this is going to be a collection. It's like okay, I'm gonna get all this new stuff, and then what were some of my favorites from my childhood, and you start going back and to buy those. So I went and I got all the Bruce Lee movies, and I got a lot of the Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone movies, and I got a lot of the comedies that I used to watch growing up, a lot of the Eddie Murphy movies, and then at some point you're like, well, no, I want to expand my horizons, so I'm just gonna kind of try to buy some of everything. And you go through a lot of changes as a collector before you eventually settle into settle into a niche, and but even that changes over time because maybe right now I'm at a point where it's like, yeah, I'm upgrading DVDs to Blu-rays a lot, but I still want to get some new releases, but I'm not trying to buy everything. But who knows? I might hit the lottery and it's like, man, I just gotta grab everything, and or fall on hard times and it's like, I'm not buying anything. So it ebbs and flows.
Yeah, I was gonna say kind of fast forwarding to like current collection and whatnot. I was gonna say, do you have like Blu-rays and 4Ks mostly now, or with mix of DVDs and stuff?
Yeah, I've got I would say about two-thirds of my collection now is Blu-ray, and almost one-third DVD, and then a section is 4K. I would say um because I was actually just looking at this was why I know this number. I don't obsess over it. But if I've got a little short of 1900 purchases, and I'm counting a box set as one purchase.
Yeah.
So a little short of 1900 purchases in my collection. And like I said, about two-thirds of those are Blu-ray, and there's probably 150-ish 4K, and then the rest DVD.
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot of people though too, because like
Mhm.
4K is obviously the freshest, but also it's more expensive.
Mhm.
Feel like a
Yeah.
lot of us have kind of wizened up, or at least are a little bit more cautious in terms of like either you buy the things that
Right.
it's almost like the start of like you were saying, like the collection is like I want to buy the things that I know and I like already enjoy. I want to upgrade those, and then if something comes along, that you don't have on 4K, sure, why not?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Because that 4K. It's weird. The pricing on 4K just keeps jumping up, and I don't understand why. When most physical media, the longest out
It
the price
appreciates. Yeah.
starts to go down. And then I was actually in one of those days where I went to Walmart and I happened to go to Target. I wasn't really shopping for movies that day. I just in my errands, I went to Walmart, I went to Target, and then I was happened to be at a thrift store where I was shopping for movies. And so I said, you know what, let me look at something. And I kind of knew, but you can get a DVD player, a pretty good one, 25, $30, just a regular DVD player. You can get a decent Blu-ray player for $50. I mean, there's more expensive ones out there, but your $50 Blu-ray player is going to do the job.
Yeah.
But your cheapest 4K player is like three times that. So I was like, that's that's where the rub is. It's not necessarily that people don't want 4Ks because a lot of us collectors, you hear us in our videos, and it's like people are still buying DVDs, but don't they know that 4K is the highest quality and all those things we say. But just the ability to play a 4K is prohibitive, cost prohibitive. Aside from what the disc costs, it's just to get a player. It's like three times what a Blu-ray player costs, and I don't know that the technology is three times as good. So
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, and those, I mean, luckily for those who have like the game systems, but like that's even more. It's not even three times.
yeah,
Like that's, but obviously you get the added bonus of you can play, video games on whatever system, like a PS5 or whatever.
Right, right. But PS5, I mean, you can you even get one in a store anymore still? Because I mean, everybody bought them up the first day, and now you gotta buy from someone who's charging you a
A
thousand
premium.
bucks for one. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, no, you do bring up a good point, especially with the players, just being a premium for people to like to have to like as a gateway kind of thing. It's honestly kind of switched over to people who are like just home theater enthusiasts, and then people like us who are just collecting these things. So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say kind of current iteration. I know we had kind of covered that at the very beginning, and figured out kind of how it proliferated into becoming the problem that it is now. I don't know if problem's the right word, but how things are. But
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what are some? I know you probably have mentioned some just in terms of talking about the memories that you've had with a lot of these movies. But do you have any favorites that you like want to spotlight that like that are some of your just personal ones that you enjoy?
Yeah, I talked about the Warriors, and that was one that I watched so many times as a kid, and it would come on late at night. It would come on 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, sometime even later. And it was literally called the Late Show or the Late Late Show, either one. There was both out there, and I just was infatuated with that movie. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the Warriors?
Oh yeah, yeah. I wish
Okay.
I missed out on the nice edition.
Yeah, yeah. I actually I bought a steelbook of it from Zavi few years ago, and then they looks like they reissued it or made an American version of it. But that's neither here nor there. But I watched that movie so many times, over the years. One of those first movies that I went looking for when I did start collecting was like, okay, I got to get the Warriors. I got to be able to watch the Warriors. And it was weird because when I actually got the DVD, it was like the first time I'd ever seen it without commercials because I had, watched it so late all those years on just regular TV. And that was one. I talked about Enter the Dragon was another one, and I watched that on TV, all throughout the years. And I was actually in the military for a while, and I introduced a couple of my friends, my buddies in the military to that movie and had a blast with that. And I must have seen that movie 50, 60 times at least. And Coming to America, and another one. That was not so much my childhood because I was about 16 when that came out, but it grew on me, and I watched that one all the time. And again, I keep just saying Stallone and Schwarzenegger because they kind of go together for,
Yeah.
for the 80s. It's like, you got Schwarzenegger, you got Stallone. So, I had to have Terminator, I had to have Rambo movies, the Rocky movies. I had to get those things. And I mentioned The Color Purple, and uh, the Wiz was one. I don't know if
Oh,
you're familiar
great
with the
movie.
Wiz.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
and it's if anybody is not familiar with the Wiz that's watching, it is literally a black version of the Wizard of Oz. It's directed though by Sidney Lumet, and you're probably familiar with him. He's a great
Yeah.
director.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he's fantastic. So
Yeah.
yeah, those were some of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's quite an eclectic mix.
Yeah,
So I enjoy it. Like, yeah, I know you mentioned, like you said, Stallone and Schwarzenegger a lot, but that I mean that they were huge, and like that was a part of my early childhood too. Just watching. Luckily, I had the VHSs, or my dad would show me those things, and so yeah, those are
so
some good spotlights.
yeah, and those two guys, I mean, it really did go hand in hand. I mean, there were times when me and my friends, especially my best friend and I, we went to the movies a lot together as teenagers, just us, and we had our younger brothers with us. But there were times when we're not at the theater and it's us and maybe a couple of other kids, and we're literally having heated debates on who's better, Stallone or Schwarzenegger. And it was, well, Stallone has got this and he's got that. Well, Arnold's got all the muscles and he's got this and this and that. And it were long conversations about this back then.
I mean, we still have conversations like that probably now.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I honestly I need to start getting more involved with like movie battles and like hot takes and whatnot and all those fun things. I just, I know we mentioned drama earlier, but so
Right, right, right. And I, for me, it's not, that's not drama.
no, it's fun because it's
Yeah,
opinion about
yeah,
movies.
yeah. As long as nobody takes it like personally and like, oh my God, how could you like that? And as long as you don't have that person, we're good.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement there. Um, so I know you just mentioned some really great movies, but like, what about any particular? I know you mentioned Stallone and Schwarzenegger, but any particular actors outside of them that you like kind of followed, or even like directors or actresses or anything?
When I was younger,
Yeah.
so at that time, well, of course, it was those two guys. And Eddie Murphy was really the first one that a lot of us really followed. Because we all watched him on Saturday Night Live, and then 48 Hours and Trading Places and Beverly Hills Cop. So he was really the first actor that I would say I really just followed. Um, and we had some of our favorites, um, but nobody that was like, if their movie comes out, I have to go see it. It really was, to bring but go back to Stallone, Schwarzenegger, those two guys, and Eddie Murphy. Those were the ones that we had to go see. Other people, yeah, we liked them, but I wasn't like, oh, if the new who was popular at that time, even Bruce Willis is like, okay, if a new Bruce Willis movie comes out, I wasn't begging my mom for money to go see the new Bruce Willis movie, and I love Die Hard. It was a great movie, but he wasn't the Bruce Willis then. He was just the guy from Moonlighting
Hmm.
at that
Yeah.
point. So it was really just those two plus Eddie Murphy. Um, I'm trying to think of anybody else really. I mean, for me, younger than that was Bruce Lee, and it wasn't a case of really following him because he had actually passed away by the time I really started getting into his filmography. But I did see all of his movies.
Yeah. What about like more currently? Like, is there any people who like like you like that's like they're on the bill? I'm gonna check them out.
Yeah, Denzel is one of those guys. I'm gonna see the new Denzel movie. I'm gonna try to get to the theater to see it best I possibly can. As far as actors goes, he's one. Um, and now, sadly to say, other than that, it's really a sign of the times. Really, it's really more franchises. It's okay. Is there the new Top Gun movies coming out? Okay, I might go see that one because Top Gun was okay. But the new Mission Impossible comes out. Both star the same guy. But the new Mission Impossible comes out. I'm going. I'm gonna
Mhm.
be there. If the new, I'm a superhero fan, so the new MCU movie comes out, okay, yeah, I'm going to see that. So it's really more franchise based now than it used to be. But outside of that, it's really Denzel Washington is the one that's gonna get me to go. Okay, just that guy. I do want to see what he's doing.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think you bring up a good point too, especially with just how I don't really feel like people these days follow actors or actresses anymore as much. I think it is the franchise move because like I mean, like you were saying, those big names earlier with like Schwarzenegger and whatnot. Like those were the people, like those were the draw. You know,
Right. Yeah.
obviously they had their franchises, like Rocky, obviously
Right.
Stallone. But if your Stallone was in a new movie, you're gonna go see a Stallone movie. Like that's what it was. But like now, it's like unless you're you know, Denzel or like Tom Cruise or
Hmm.
Tom Hanks or someone who is like from a previous era
Yeah. Yeah.
of which is they're still going of course, but there's very few like modern people who are like you're just like I want to go see. I'll just
Yeah.
say like
I was listening to not actually I wasn't listening to it, but I read it somewhere where Anthony Mackie, who's in Marvel movies,
yeah.
he plays Falcon in
Hmm.
the new Captain America now, but he was saying about himself, he was like, Anthony Mackie is not a movie star. Falcon is a movie star. I'm, I'm just in the MCU. People really don't even recognize Anthony Mackie, and if I put out a movie outside of that, nobody's really uh definitely nobody. I'm not a box office draw where I can go see it, but put me in that costume to play Falcon and everybody wants to see it. And even with even some of the more popular actors, I mean, Chris Hemsworth, like his Extraction movies, they're pretty good movies. I like them. I just watched Extraction 2 not long ago, but they're straight to Netflix. Nobody's really shelling out dollars to go see Chris Hemsworth in Extraction or Robert Downey Jr. in anything since he's been in the MCU, really,
Right.
and been in a few, and they mostly bombed. So, yeah, it's a franchise game right now.
Yeah. It's a noticeable thing, and I think it's a sign of the times. But
Yeah.
I was gonna say, kind of pivoting from those actors and actresses that we talked about, is there any like directors that you like to follow in particular?
Yeah, you know what? To be honest with you, directors are probably more of a draw for me than actors. And when I was a kid, it was Steven Spielberg. I mean, if there was a Steven Spielberg movie, we had to go see it. At least I was trying to get to the theater to see it. It was E.T., it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was just anything he was putting out, I was trying to go see. Um, and he was really the one director that all of us knew because a lot of times we as kids when we watched movies, when the credits come on telling you who directed the movie, that kind of stuff just kind of flies by us
Right.
and we're not really paying attention. But that name, you just even as a kid, you're noticing, okay, that name keeps coming up over and over and over, and people talk about him over and over and over. So that was really the first director that I really followed. um as the years went on, as I became a teenager, Spike Lee started to come around. So I really started to follow him, and he is my number one director of all time because his movies just speak to me in a way that other movies don't. And then at some point, I discovered Scorsese, and that was probably I saw Raging Bull really young, like 9, 10 years old, and it, I didn't know it was a Scorsese flick, but I knew I liked it, even though a lot of it went over my head because I was so young.
And it was black and
Um,
white.
and it was black and white. Yeah, and funny story. I mean, my uncle was a Golden Gloves boxer for a little while, and so he was heavy into boxing, and he actually put that movie on one night, and I was just kind of hanging out. It was him and his friends, and I was just kind of hanging out over at his house, and that's how I saw it. Um, but it was years later before I actually understood what I what I just watched. But yeah, that Scorsese, I kind of discovered him in my late teens. It was years later though that I would find out that the same guys directed a bunch of movies that I liked. Years later I found out, oh, John Landis directed 4, 5, 6 movies that I liked. Or Walter Hill directed another 4 or 5 movies that I liked. But at that point, I wasn't really following them. Currently, as I've gotten older, you get into this space. Like I said, when I started collecting, so well, let me start trying to get a little bit of everything. And then I got into Stanley Kubrick and some Sidney Lumet and um, uh, Oliver Stone, and then as that time goes on, Hitchcock, of course, everybody tries to get into Hitchcock. And nowadays, just the guys that are working now, I really like Ryan Coogler. I really like. I think he's an awesome director. Steve McQueen is an awesome director. Um, Ari Aster is another one. I really enjoy his work. I haven't seen his latest movie yet, or was it Bo?
I was afraid. I still haven't seen it.
Yeah, haven't seen that one yet, but I really enjoy his movies. Um, and there's a few, and I tend to look for the director before the actor.
Yeah. Which I mean goes back to our point with like the franchises too. Like I feel like it has pivoted towards like if there's a name to it, like it's usually like it's the director, not so
Yeah,
much the actor as much.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Coppola, Brian De Palma, more guys that it started following over the years, but yeah, definitely.
yeah. Now the tricky part is if you could choose one of those directors, how would you like be in front of the camera? Would you be behind the camera? Who like if you could interact with them and like be a part of someone's work, who would it be and why and what would you do?
That, I was thinking about this question, and that's a really good question. It, be honest with you, just to from a technical standpoint, I'd probably like to be behind the camera with Scorsese. I mean, such a student of filmmaking and his work. You know, whether you like all of his movies or not, you can't deny how well made they are. And so, you know, just to be around him and absorb as much as possible. And if I could be an assistant director with him, that would be amazing. I did say Spike Lee was my favorite director. I would for him with him though, and he's also technically proficient. He's also a student of film. Also, if you've ever listened to him talk about movies, um, but for him, because his movies speak to me in a way that other people's don't, um, I would probably more like to collaborate with the writing process and see what we could create together.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I came to Spike Lee a little later, and I'm an Indiana Pacers fan, so we have a little bit of a history,
Oh yeah,
uh, with the whole Reggie.
yeah, oh yeah, oh
Uh,
yeah, oh yeah.
yeah, but it's always funny because like because basketball is one of my loves, and then obviously cinema is my other, and it's always funny like because like I love Spike in the movie side of things, but then like when I see him on the on court side, Knicks versus Pacers, I'm just like, okay, here we go, what's gonna happen, you know?
Did you watch the documentary he did on the on Reggie Miller and
Uh,
the Pacers and the Pacers and the Knicks?
yeah, I did. It's a great 30 for 30. I love that one.
Yeah, it is. It is. He also has one on Kobe that's really good too.
Yeah, and then like I guess the most recent I guess Netflix has their like they did the Malice at the Palace of Detroit and the
Yeah,
Pacers.
I haven't watched that one yet.
It's good.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna check it out.
yeah. So, but anyway, sports talks, you know. But yeah, I was gonna say I'm excited for the current year though. Like sorry that we got Obi from you guys pretty easily. So, but I think the Knicks are doing something special. Brunson's gonna be great there. So
Yeah, they're looking up. They're looking up. And the last time they won a title, I was 2 years old, so I had no idea, what happened then, other than what I've read. So crossing my fingers that they get it done before I pass on to the next life.
yeah, and I hope that the Pacers win their first. So, which I mean, in ABA they did, but like that's a completely different league. So, um,
There's hope. We just got a champion for the first time this year. The
yeah,
Nuggets,
Denver,
the
yeah,
first
and
ever.
then
So
yeah, I was gonna say that's the cool thing. I actually was happy that they won. So,
yeah,
it's good for them. So, but yeah, basketball talk. So probably you said interacting with Spike, of course. And then behind the cameras though, like is kind of what you were saying with both directors, right?
yeah. I don't trust my acting ability.
Well, I mean, at least you can, be a part of it and somehow, at
Yeah,
least it,
yeah, that would be cool.
yeah, even if it's behind the camera. So, um, I was gonna say now the toughest question I always like to ask, but sometimes it's easy, just depending on how you look at things. But if your life was a movie, what would the title of that movie be?
So yeah, I was thinking about that, and it's a that's a doozy of a question. Your life is never really just one thing.
You're right.
And you go through phases, so you kind of have to decide on what aspect of your life you want to tell. And if I try to encompass it all, maybe I would call it something like Family Man, just because I've had a family now longer than I've had my own family. We've all had our family our whole life, but I've had the family that I have now, my wife and my children, longer than I didn't have them at this point in my life. Um, 'Cause I'm about to turn 52 next week, and yeah, I've been married since I was 27.
Yeah. So
So
you're right. You're right there at the middle part, right? A
yeah.
little longer. Also,
So
happy early birthday.
thank you. And so that might be the title if I just want to focus on my wife and I's relationship, just her and I's name, just Dell and Yolanda, or I could focus on, my younger years, and I'd give it a more New York slanted title. So, but I'd probably lean towards Family Man.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome, and I'm glad that you've had that much time, to spend with her, and then also your kids too. So
Yeah,
that's really important. So, um, yeah, no, I love it, and I was gonna say there's no right answer on those. So
right.
it's always a journey, and I think you brought up a good point too, especially like how do you highlight one aspect, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, but so I guess kind of culminating all this together, thinking about it as you've grown up with it and how you're interacting with it now, especially with the community and whatnot. Um, how has this medium influenced your outlook on life or how you interact with other people?
It it's shaped a lot because one thing you mentioned earlier, you said I had a pretty eclectic, collection of movies that I mentioned when I was younger. And to be honest, that's just kind of what everybody was watching. Those are really kind of more mainstream things. And as I've gotten older, it's like, okay, you know what? I want to branch out. Maybe I watch a bunch of Korean cinema, and I've watched a lot of Japanese, and I've watched some Russian, I've watched some Italian, I've watched some from every corner of the world. I've watched some movie. Um, and you get to realize there are a lot more ways that we're alike than we're different. Sure, our languages are different. Sure, some of our customs are different, but human emotion is human emotion. And to paraphrase Roger Ebert, who I think is the greatest film critic, even though I don't always agree with him, I know some people, he didn't like this movie or that movie. Sure, I'm not going to agree with him all the
Everyone's that
time.
way.
Right, right. But to paraphrase him, you know, the movies is basically a machine for creating empathy, and that is one of the things that when I first read him writing that, and it really stuck with me. And it's true because watching all these movies from all over the place, even if I can't relate to an exact story of the characters that I'm watching, I can empathize with them because there's some small kernel of it that I can relate to. So sure, maybe a movie like Parasite. No, my family's never been in such a situation where everything is leaking, and then we're gonna go try and swindle a rich family out of
Yeah, yeah.
everything. But I understand struggle. I do understand struggle because I didn't grow up rich. I did grow up fairly poor. So I do understand struggle. It's like, okay, so I can empathize with that and I can grab onto things. And even people who have different viewpoints than me, then I can find some bit of humanity in them to be like, okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. And I can, if I don't fully understand it, but I at least get where you're coming from. And I think movies has really helped me with that.
Yeah, I love that Ebert quote. I agree. I think that's a very apt thing that, and I don't know if you discovered this like this quote previously, or it was kind of like a natural cause because, like, at least for me, watching a lot of things that are outside of my experience, uh, or like like Parasite, you mentioned that. I'm like obviously that's outside most of our experiences. None of us
Right.
have really done something like that, but yeah, it really does make you realize how small like this world is, and like or how small our maybe our lives are, and there's so much out there, and like you said,
Hmm.
we get a little bit of an understanding ish to what other people are going through, and even if it's a fictional story, there's still an element of something there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely an element of something there. And we can always bring it, I can always bring it back to me for something. And then, it spills into the real world because we all grow up with a certain set of beliefs. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s, which you listen to people talk, is almost like the dark ages, especially with a lot of the viewpoints that I grew up with. But over time, and not just interacting with people in real life, because you only have a certain amount of people you interact with on a daily basis, but I can watch a movie with that from anywhere, and with people from all different walks of life, and all sorts of things going on that I will never deal with. But in getting to empathize with them, I can empathize with someone and can understand, okay, maybe the way I saw something, 20, 30, 40 years ago isn't the right way. Maybe I can change my thinking and be more accepting to someone of this persuasion or who's going through this certain thing or is dealing with that certain thing.
And I mean, that's a really uh, great characteristic. Like, I think, thinking about the ways that a lot of us interact with, like we said, our backgrounds that we have, and changing that, like, it's almost like it's a taboo to like look back at, some things that you may have a belief on something, but like the taboo of like changing that, like, or at
Yeah.
least looking back and reflecting and being like, is this right? Is this wrong?
Yeah.
That's huge, and I love that this medium has allowed that for a lot of us.
Oh
So
yeah, it definitely has. And people who watch a lot of movies, to be honest, they're more open-minded people because they understand that everybody's not just like them.
man, this has been an absolute blast. I was going to say, before we end this whole thing, do you have any final thoughts for people watching, or anything to shout out?
Well, I'll say just when you watch movies, guys, if you're watching this, you're probably a movie buff, you're a movie fan. When you watch movies, I would say start to watch them critically, but also maybe dig a little bit beneath the surface, and you'd be surprised how much you get out of watching a movie. Because even a silly action movie, there's some subtext in the movie that you can take something more away from it. Um, and when you start watching movies a little more critically, also, and unfortunately, you may start to recognize patterns and be like, oh God, that again. But
Yeah,
yeah, but it's a way to be engaged with the movie and get something out of it more than just, oh, that's a cool explosion. So I would encourage that. As far as shouting anything out, really, guys, just I encourage you to check out Movie Swap, where we just kind of we dive into some movies and we have a good talk about it. And I don't tell people in advance what the movies are. I don't, of course, the person on the stream with me knows, but I don't tell
right.
the audience. So you'll get to be surprised, and man, maybe I've seen that, or you'll get a good recommendation for a movie that at least one person up there likes, because it's not always a guarantee that both of us like the movie. And I mean, that's the way it goes. You recommend a movie, sometimes it's not to the other person's liking, but we have a good time with it. And check out the channel if you can. And if you want to see me on Instagram, I'm there. And Letterboxd, I'm there. And it's all Dell on movies.
Right there, everyone who is watching right now. I'll have links in the description here. Dell, thanks again for jumping on board with this, and it's about time, right? Like,
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I had a fun time. It's always great when we get to just talk about movies and on in this case, I get to talk about myself too. So what better deal than that?
yeah. I was gonna say, people. I hope that people enjoy just having some kind of, even if it's I'm interacting, but like there's like a soundboard, right? Or it's like you can share a little
Mhm.
bit about yourself and why we are all obsessed with this silly thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And man, I had a great time. And yeah, definitely the invites coming. Definitely want to get you on the movie swap so we can chat some more.
Yeah, I got to start thinking about what to gather for that, but
It's not that bad. It's okay.
yeah, no. I'm thinking of like fun things to
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
What can I send?
yeah.
So, well, I hope everyone has enjoyed this conversation, and go follow Dell on all those platforms. Great person with a lot of really awesome little. He's in a lot of different places too, so not just those places that are there, but if you follow. The community in general. You'll see him somewhere.
Yeah, I'll pop
Probably
up somewhere.
a pop up. So anyway, I say thanks everyone. I hope you can comment down below, join in our conversation. And if anything stood out, let us know. We'd love to hear more about that, interact with that way. So hope you all enjoyed it. Give it a like, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.
Bye bye, guys.